Hello and welcome to another episode of The Away End. My name is Daniel Alarcon. My co-host John Green is indisposed at the moment, and we're going to do something a little different. We're doing an episode without him, and sitting in for John Green is our producer, Sean Titone. Hello, Sean.
Hey, Daniel. How you doing?
Now, I'm doing great. Sean, you are renowned and celebrated around the world for your encyclopedic soccer knowledge. Which will surely be on display in today's episode. And what we've decided to do, well, why don't you explain what we're going to do today that's just a little bit different?
Yeah, I guess the bulk of today's episode is going to come from listener emails, which is not necessarily something completely new to the show, something we normally relegate to the end of the episodes. But we are going to make it the full episode because we've been getting so many thoughtful emails from our listeners, which again, you guys can email the show at awayendpod@gmail.com. Thank you all so much for everything you've sent in. But I think we're going to just go through some of these questions for today's episode.
Yeah. And I should say that our next episode, John had prepared a deep dive into the U.S. men's national team, which I'm excited to hear. I have a story to tell, which is related to that. And we're going to just table that discussion until next week. But in the meantime, here's Sean and I answering some questions. I think mostly me answering the questions, yeah?
That would probably be best for our listeners, yes.
Okay. All right. So let's go. Why don't you start with the first email? I'm so excited to hear what's been written.
All right, here we go. First email, Dear John and Daniel, I am a Brazilian football fan and was very surprised to see that a Brazilian coach was announced as the new Peruvian national team coach. I'm curious to see what Daniel thinks about this. In Brazil, he is regarded as a reliable coach for helping clubs avoid relegation, but not much beyond that. He saved my team, Fluminense, from relegation in 2024, so I have a soft spot for him. Follows it up with this news combined with Ancelotti becoming the Brazilian national team coach got me thinking about how strange it still feels when a national team hires a foreign coach. On the one hand, I'm very happy Brazil has a coach as great as Ancelotti, and it's making me a little hopeful for Brazil's chances for the first time in a long time. But at the same time, it still feels strange to me that he is not Brazilian. What do you guys think about this trend? Best wishes, Helena.
Helena, thank you for your question. I love this question because it makes me think a lot about national identity and stylistic footballing identity as it relates to the personality and character of a nation. I think Ancelotti, I'll start with the Ancelotti question because I do think that if there is a non-Brazilian who can get Brazilian football, I think it would be Ancelotti. Having coached across Europe, had many Brazilian players. I think he, in his most recent job was at Real Madrid, where he worked really closely with Vinicius Jr. And they have a great relationship. I think that he sort of understands the need for Brazilian players to really express themselves and to take risks. And he trusts his players. And I think that for those reasons, he'll do well. Now, it does raise a lot of interesting questions. Helena's referring to the Peruvian coach, Manu Menezes, who's the new coach of the national team. I think it's really interesting because you say that he's an expert in saving teams from relegation. Let's be honest. If there were relegation for national teams, Peru would have been relegated in the last World Cup qualifying season. So we ended up second to last, just ahead of Chile. And it's kind of brutal. So it's not exactly the magic. We don't necessarily need a coach who's going to bring us up, and make us champions of South America. But to raise our level from the bottom, there's almost nowhere to go but up. He's got to oversee a complete overhaul of the team, a generational transformation, bring in new players, and it's not going to be an easy task. I will say this: while we as fans often want our coach to be from the country, to represent the country, our most successful coach of modern times in Peru, anyway, has been Gareca, Argentine, who took us to the 2018 World Cup. And I do think there's something about having an outsider come in and sort of tell you sort of what you need to do without the kind of romanticism of being tied to the national project in the same way that can be super useful. I mean, it's almost like hiring a consultant, to come in and tell you who's the dead wood. And I think in that sense, it can be useful.
Yeah, I mean, I think about a team like Brazil, who just seems to always be a favorite any World Cup that they're in, paired with a coach who has such, an amazing record, working with so many different teams. Do you feel like this pairing puts them in a place to have to be a favorite heading into this year's World Cup?
I think you never discount Brazil. And I wonder, however, as his pedigree, as you mentioned, is incredible. He's coached at all the biggest clubs in Europe, but he's never coached the national team, which is a different beast altogether. When you coach a club team, you work with the players, 10 months a year, 6 days a week. You see them in training every single day. You see them in games. And at those top leagues, you're watching. They're playing 2 games a week. For a national team, you get camps that are 1 week long, in the middle of the season, and then maybe a longer camp in the summer for a tournament, in preparation for a tournament. But you're basically you're sort of like a scout, because you're always going to the stadiums or watching the games to see how your players are doing. But a player might be playing badly because they're in a bad team with a bad coach with bad tactics, but they might still be a good player for you, right? Or your best player might be, had a falling out with their manager of their club team and they're not playing, and they need to be playing to be at, in tip top shape for the tournament. So it's like this really interesting balancing act that's so different from what Ancelotti's used to. And I think that's going to be really interesting. But to Helena's question, I think Brazil will do very well this time. They're just too good. Have too many good players, too many talented players to not pull it together. I'm not saying they're going to win. And actually, one of the problems I think with Brazil is that if they don't win, it's a failure, right? Because they're so historically such a powerful team. But I think, getting to the semis would be incredible for this Brazilian team, considering the kind of disappointments they've had in the past.
Well, thank you, Helena, for such a great question. Should we go to the next one?
Yeah, let's do it.
Dear John and Daniel, really enjoying the pod. Looking forward to hearing more. Well, thank you. Last episode, amidst your criticism of the away goals rule, which it admittedly deserves, parentheses, theirs, you neglected to mention the rule's greatest upside. It was the only way a team could go directly from losing to winning in a single kick. While the game is probably better off without the rule, many of us will miss moments like Andres Iniesta's goal against Chelsea in 2009 or Lucas Moura's goal against Ajax in 2019. Both goals took teams to the Champions League final directly from losing positions, a beautiful level of drama that is unfortunately no longer possible. My question is, do either of you support or follow any clubs here in the U.S.?
Let me address the first one. I completely agree with you. There was such drama in in one goal changing everything, and I agree. The Lucas Moura goal for sure. I remember the Andres Iniesta goal. I remember mostly for the image of Chelsea's captain, the German guy, running after the ref, shouting in his face, demanding that the goal be called off for a foul. And I can't remember the German player's name, actually, unfortunately. No, that's gone. That's gone. I just don't think it's as fair as it used to be. It's no longer necessary, and it's not super fair anymore. Okay, the other question: do you support or follow any clubs here in the U.S.? Yes, I. In the first episode, so longtime listeners of the Away In will know that I made fun of MLS a little bit in the very first episode, and made fun of Red Bulls, New York Red Bulls. But actually, that's my team. I actually really love them. They're not great, but the stadium experience is so lovely. People there are so So nice. We have a nice little rivalry with NYCFC. We have a new player. I remember watching, for example, Tyler Adams play there, who's now one of the best players on the U.S. men's national team when he was like 17, and just thinking he was the best player on the pitch. So I feel like I've had really great experiences watching that team. There's a new kid now, Julian Hall, I think his name is. Scored a brace in the first game of the MLS season the other day. And so, yeah, it's good. It's a good academy. They have lots of good young players. They don't have a huge salary budget, and that's one of the reasons why they never do as well as you would like them to do, being theoretically a big market team. But yeah, they're fun to watch, and I like teams who wear red. So there it is, the New York Red Bulls. I can't answer for John, but we'll pose that question to him when he gets back.
Moving on. Next email here. Love the podcast. I fell in love with soccer as an adult and probably will never catch up despite the growing obsession. So this could not have come at a better time. Maybe you've noticed, but a lot of media around soccer is super lame, toxic, ultimately really depressing. And all that noise, it's lovely to hear the uplifting bits highlighted and the tough realities of the sport discussed thoughtfully.
Thank you. That's so nice.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. They go on, I was lightly devastated by your Uruguay analysis as a Bielsa appreciator and Darwin believer. Sue me. I do appreciate getting the chance to quash hope in advance and can root for the best case. Project Get Out Argentina. Prompted by your talk on James Rodriguez, I'm curious if there are any other standout players who play notably better for country than club. I'd love to hear more of their stories. And then my side and equally important question is, why do players hate Marc Cucurella so much? He seems like an all right guy who doesn't reach even close to Bruno Fernandes levels of annoying. Anyway, love the pod. Let's go
right.
Colombia,
Yes,
Uruguay, and never
England.
I don't have a name for that email, so I don't know. Thank you to whoever wrote that, though.
Oh, shoot. We'll find out who that was, but that's a great question. It's in the email if you want to look it up. Okay. James Rodriguez, players who notably play better for country than club. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is Landon Donovan. Unfortunately, like I remember watching him when he'd come play every few months, once a year or every few months, play a few months for Everton in the Premier League, and I never thought he was up to much. Yeah, honestly, that's the one. But he scored some incredibly important goals for the U.S. in major competitions, including that glorious last-second winner against Algeria, which I'll never forget. And I celebrated vociferously and frightened my neighbors. So yeah, he's the one that stands out for me. Okay, Sean, before I answer the Marc Cucurella question, can you Google Marc Cucurella so you just sort of see what we're talking about, who we're talking about here? Okay, so now that you're looking at a picture of Marc Cucurella, do you want to know? I want you to just guess, why do you think people hate him so much?
I mean, he has glorious hair.
He has glorious hair. He does.
Yeah. So I can't imagine they would hate him for his flowing locks. That can't be any reason for somebody to hate somebody. So I don't know.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there. I think my theory is that it does have to do with that. I feel like players with long hair stand out so much, and he has beautiful hair, like gorgeous hair, And I think that he stands out on the pitch so much that he draws a lot of attention to himself by having that hair. There was a player for Arsenal a few seasons ago, last name Guendouzi, and he had similar hair, and I think he also sort of became a pantomime villain for other teams. So there's something about the long hair that just is like, hey, look at me, and other teams' fans sort of don't take kindly to that. Look, I'm sure he seems like I'm sure he's a nice guy. I have no question, and I'm sure Bruno Fernandes is also a fine human being. Like I have no reason to think otherwise. I think that players hate Marc Cucurella in part because he is very good. He's a very good defender. He has that long hair that calls attention to him, and he does do a lot of like. To me, I mean, Chelsea fans love him the same way that Man United fans will love Bruno Fernandes. But Marco Corella is, he does a lot of like fouls, like niggly fouls, and then falls over and flops a lot, and complains a lot. He's a very passionate player, and he has that beautiful mane of curly hair that I think that combination just makes you hate him. And it's probably not fair. Nothing about fandom is fair or logical, but there it is. We should take a quick break. Come back and read some more emails.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, we'll be right back. Okay, we're back on the away end. I'm Daniel Alarcon. Sean Titone, our producer, is here sitting in. He got called up to the first team, subbing in at the last moment for John Green. This is a question from Andre Voss. You want to read this one? I'd really like this question.
Andre says, if Curacao can field a team with the quality for the World Cup, could the Upper West Side, it's about the same population, referring to New York City, the Upper West Side of New York. That is a callback to our last episode, I think, when Daniel was talking about playing on a team on the Upper West Side. Check out that episode. Thank you for the high quality of humor and quality and your take on the game. Middle-aged expat who spent the first half of his life in Germany and the second half on the Upper West Side.
All right. So this is Andre Voss. I wonder if I've played with Andre. So I've played a lot on the Upper West Side in Riverside Park, in Morningside Park, at Booker T. Washington Park, Annunciation Park, which is up over by City College. Basically anywhere green that has a soccer pitch between like 59th Street and 145th Street. I've played there at some point. Now, could we put together a team that could play against Curacao? Because let me rephrase the question. Because could a team from the Upper West Side qualify for the World Cup? Like, if we had been in the place of Curacao, could we have beaten, say, Jamaica or Trinidad and Tobago? Those teams that Curacao would have been playing against. I don't think so. I don't think so. It's an interesting question. It's not just a matter of population. I feel like players on the Upper West Side vary in quality, age, sort of how seriously they take the game, fitness. I don't feel like I've seen. I've played with a lot of really quality old people on the Upper West Side. Like, and by old people I mean like people my age and older. And I always end up saying they're very good for their age, which I can't even say about myself anymore. But I don't think that we could do it. At least not the players that I'm coming across. The younger player, maybe there's a kind of undiscovered, crew of players ages 18 to 28 on the Upper West Side who could really put it together. But we'd have to find 22 of them. No, I'm going to say no. However, I have played some really incredible games with some really wonderful players and most importantly, wonderful people on the Upper West Side. So in the World Cup of lovely people, the Upper West Side would be at least make it to the quarterfinals.
Nice. Yeah. I would imagine if you are in that 18 to 28 range and you are actually really good and talented, you're most likely not playing in a league on the Upper West Side.
Where I would be playing? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
It's like we're like ships passing in the night. So there are good players that are World Cup level. It's just that I would never see them because I'm playing with a bunch of old people with bad knees. That's probably true, Sean. That's a fair point. Okay. So how about
moving on.
Andre's question? No, to Andre's question, we'll have to do more research. We're just not sure.
All right. Thank you, Andre. Let's see. All right. This comes from Tyler. Hey guys, loving the away end so far. Never listened to a football pod before. Well, welcome, Tyler. As a new fan, one thing that keeps confusing me about the tiers of English football will be when I hear about some town I've never heard of, and then you say that they lost to Arsenal or some super world famous team. Coming from the world of American football, that's like hearing that some random suburb got beaten by the New England Patriots. Is Arsenal playing random teams like this all the time? Do they ever lose? Is it a flatter competitive level than I think? And Manchester United just happens to have better PR people. Thanks, Tyler.
That is a great question. Okay, so these are kind of basic structural questions about how European leagues work, and I think it's kind of fascinating, especially if you are sort of if you're accustomed to American sports leagues, they're closed basically, and there's no promotion or relegation. So you can, in the NBA now, and I know this only tangentially, people are, like one of the big conversations about tanking. In a European league or any sort of soccer league that has promotion and relegation, there's no tanking because the teams are fighting to the last day to stay in the league because the bottom three teams usually go down, right? So now, how is it then that a team like Arsenal is playing like some small suburban team? So in addition to regular sort of the season, the league, what we would call like the regular season, that is its own championship, right? That's its own tournament, right? So every team plays every team, home and away, 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw. Whoever has the most points at the end wins. And that is the most coveted trophy in the land, right? It's a very big deal. And my team, for example, Arsenal, hasn't won in 22 years. And it's the source of much anxiety and hope and expectation and despair every season. Will this be the year that Arsenal wins, right? And it's just, there's no playoffs at the end. It's just, who has the most points at the end, period, right? So that's one thing. What makes a lot of these leagues interesting, I think, and this happens, again, not just in England or in what we call the Premier League, but all over Europe and a lot of national leagues in Latin America as well, is that simultaneous to the regular league, they're playing cups, right? So in the UK, they play the League Cup and the FA Cup, right? And that's where you're going to get, so you might see Arsenal playing, a Wigan, a team like Wigan, right? And Wigan has been in the Premier League. They've fallen out of the Premier League and they're currently, I think, languishing in like what would be the second or third division. But they get in these cups, basically all the teams get put in the pot, and they pick random teams and they have these playoffs, and that is structured like a playoff where it's like a knockout tournament. Two teams play each other, the winner goes on, and blah blah blah. And so that's where you get these kind of strange, exotic matchups of a gigantic team like Manchester United with a small team like Macclesfield or whatever, Luton Town, etc. And it can be really fun because that's whenever you'll hear the phrase, and I've become very attuned to like English soccer cliches, which I love. And people talk about the magic of the cup, and I think that's what they refer to as when you get these minnows beating up on these giants. So it isn't really that Manchester United has better PR people; it's that they have bigger budgets, bigger stadiums, many more trophies, huge fan bases that are not just local but international, and those teams, will occasionally get drawn against smaller teams in these cups, and they can be huge paydays for the small teams because they get TV money and they get ticket money, and they also a huge sense of pride if a small team knocks out a big team. It's always really fun, unless it's your team, and then it sucks. But I think it's fun. I think it would be fun to see the New England Patriots play against, I don't know, some Pop Warner Pee Wee football team. That'd be fun. Just see what happens.
From the Upper West Side?
Possibly the Upper West Side, in football would be really great. So I hope that answers your question, Tyler. And welcome to the world of football and football pods. All right. Before we go, we actually looked this up, and our apologies and our gratitude to Livia Mars, who asked the question about Mark Cucurella, which was my absolute favorite. So let's take a quick break. We'll come back with a couple more questions before we wrap up. Okay, this is the away end here with Sean, our producer. Sean, how you doing, man?
Doing well. Enjoying these emails.
Okay, we got a couple of more questions before we wrap up this special episode. Okay, you want to hit me with this one from Jonathan?
Sounds good. Yeah, this comes from Jonathan Antshirl. He asks, why are China not a powerhouse? Why is China?
Well, let's not correct Jonathan here. I mean, he's asking a question not to be corrected in his grammar.
Why is China?
I think it is why is. Yes. Okay, fine. It's why is China not a powerhouse in football? Okay, go on.
It's a pretty big sport over there, unlike, say, India, where a few other sports are more popular. They have the amount of people and skill. They have money. They have good work ethic. I studied and lived there for a year. So what's up with that?
What's up with that? That's a great question. And I am not a Chinese expert on Chinese soccer or an expert on Chinese anything. My first response to this, having said that I know nothing, I'm going to say something anyway. My first response to this is that it feels to me like China's good at whatever they want to be good at. And so maybe they haven't just committed to this sport yet. I was just remember, just a couple of weeks ago, I was watching or that might have been last week, I guess, even a lot of these like snowboarding, half pipe lunatic sports in the winter Olympics that were amazing. And there's Chinese athletes at the very top of those sports. And just really amazing to see. I have no doubt that that if China sort of decides as a nation they want to be really good at soccer, they will be. There is a Chinese Super League, and I wonder how much of it is related to the sort of boom and bust cycle that the Chinese Super League had. There was a time, and it wasn't very long ago, maybe 15, 12 years ago or something, when the Chinese Super League was the equivalent of what the Saudi Pro League is now, where they just had, gobs and gobs of money and were throwing crazy contracts at European-based players and luring them away from top teams, teams like Chelsea. I'm thinking of a wonderful Brazilian player named Oscar, who kind of disappeared into China and I think, as far as I know, continues to play there. But it did feel like such a fall off in skill and sort of technical level that players that went off to play in China kind of like were never heard from again, because they weren't then called back to their national teams because they had dropped a level or two or three. My understanding is that the Chinese Super League has had sort of cycles. They no longer have the money to throw around like they did, so they're not bringing in that kind of talent. And in any case, I mean, those leagues end up thriving when they have, the eyeballs and the attention of local audiences, right? And sometimes bringing in a foreign player who's a star can jumpstart that process. Sometimes it can lead to a raising of the level that makes the local players better. Sometimes it can lead to distortions that don't really sort of lead to sort of grassroots soccer excellence. So I'd have to know more about like how much are the Chinese clubs investing in their academies, because that's where the next great generation of players are always going to come. And that sort of remains to be seen. But yeah, basically you're right. They have the people and the skill and the money, so you would think they'd be able to do it.
You did have thoughts on that. See,
I have thoughts on lots of things, man. It's one of the things that I do. Just sit around and think.
All right. Let's see. Last but not least, we have a wonderful note here from Simon. Simon Venn. He says, "Hi, John, Daniel, and Sean. Thank you for looping me in
all
here."
Three spellings. Yeah. He
all three spellings. Yeah. He got it right with one of the three, so that's good. Not sure if you'll be doing any deep dives into Australia for the podcast, but I felt compelled to email in due to Daniel being Peruvian and how we, Australia, came to qualify for the 2022 World Cup. Perhaps Daniel can retell the story of the Peru versus Australia interconfederation playoff from his perspective. In Australia, the quote, gray wiggle was instantly enshrined in our footballing folklore thanks to Andrew Redmayne's dancing antics during the penalty shootout, especially as he was substituted on just for the shootout. Despite Peru's ultimate loss, sorry, I do believe that I do believe that Redmayne did actually become sort of a cult figure in Peru following the game. I'd love to hear about how Daniel experienced everything surrounding that game, including the lead up and aftermath, if he can bring himself to. Looking forward to the World Cup and Australia playing the USA. Thank you. And you'll never walk alone. Shout out to John and his favorite song. So yeah, thank you, Simon.
Oh, all right. Well, if I can bring myself to answer this question, that's good. Thank you, Simon, for this and for reminding me of a truly terrible day. No, so okay. So for those of you who don't know, and I presume that most listeners weren't glued to their televisions watching the Interconfederation playoff between Peru and Australia 4 years ago, but I was, and so were most of my cousins and family and many friends. So what he's referring to, what Simon's referring to, is the goalkeeper, Andrew Redmayne, the second string Australian goalkeeper. They played the game had gone to a 0-0, if I remember correctly. It went to extra time and then went to penalty kicks, and it was decided on penalty kicks. They bring on Andrew Redmayne specifically for the shootout, which is something that isn't often done. And when he says the gray wiggle, it's because this guy, have you seen, Sean, these kind of like in front of a used car dealership, they have the air guy that they just like that inflates and its arms flap around. So imagine that in the form of like a 6'6" Australian guy with a beard, sort of flapping about, and you can't come off your line in a soccer shootout. Like as the penalty's taken, when the penalty is taken, your foot has to be, at least one foot has to be on the line. So he's moving side to side, flapping his arms like a deranged giant, pterodactyl or something, and completely freaked out the Peruvian players. I don't remember how many players missed or who missed. I blocked it all out. I just know that as soon as he started flapping his arms, I knew that we were going to lose, and we did. So now, how do I feel about that? I have a lot of thoughts about this. I happened to be at the 2018 game when Peru qualified playing New Zealand, and there's a huge difference. And the difference, and the core difference, is in 2018, those games were played home and away. So the Peruvian team flew to New Zealand, played there 0-0. Then the flew back to Lima. The New Zealand team flew to Lima and was completely overwhelmed by playing in a Peruvian stadium full of Peruvian fans. They must have been jet lagged. When they were trying to rest, the Peruvian Air Force flew a plane over their hotel to keep them from resting. There were fans camped out their hotel all night long, playing, singing, drums. I remember being at the stadium and just I could tell how overwhelmed the Kiwis were with the atmosphere. 2 hours before the game, the stadium was full and everyone was singing. I mentioned that because it's a huge disadvantage for us to play a game in a neutral territory, and I can't remember actually where they played. But when we played Australia on neutral ground, we lost all the atmosphere, and that we lost. It was like playing a man down for Peru. Having said that, we didn't do great. We didn't really deserve to get through. We didn't play with any sort of authority or attacking verve. And when it went down to penalty shootouts, when it goes to penalty shootouts, anyone can win. And as soon as Andrew Redmayne started throwing his arms around, it was obvious to me what was going to happen. So there it is. That's the story. Very painful to remember. But thank you, Simon, for your question and for making me relive that trauma.
The gray wiggle reminds me of, I know we've talked a little bit about how John was sort of the ultra in our high school during soccer matches when he would come to watch. But I also feel like I have memories of him doing that during basketball games. to try to rattle whoever was shooting free throws on the other team, doing a similar dance as well as yelling to try to rattle the shooter. Does that
I
ring
think
a bell to
these
you
are,
at all?
yeah, and I think these are the kinds of skills that the intangibles that John brings to any sporting sporting endeavor. It's his ability to or his willingness to embrace the absurdity and his complete lack of shame that really make him the X factor in all kinds of sports. But yeah, having said that, here we were talking about John. We miss him. We'll see him next week, I'm sure. And in the meantime, Sean, thanks for filling in, man.
Yeah, no, this was awesome. I appreciate you bringing me up to read through some of these emails, and please, everyone out there, keep sending them in. We love reading them, and maybe yours will end up in a future episode. But we look forward to having John back with us next week, and thanks so much to everybody for listening.
Thanks so much. Again, our email address is awayendpod@gmail.com, and we'll see you next week.